you're going to do well. That's the mentality you want to have. You want to have a bit of a relaxed, a bit of a calm mindset. You don't want to be on your feet thinking like, oh my God, my entire year is depending on if I like do well in UCAT or not. And obviously having things outside of UCAT really helped as well.
Yeah, it can be really tough to draw yourself out of that negative self-talk mindset. Yeah, and having someone to pull you out of that and give you some positive reinforcement is excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you change that second time around? What did you put in place that was going to get you that result?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I really wanted to focus on like why I just wanted wasn't able to do it. And I wanted to compare myself. Look, comparing, like when I say comparing, I don't mean it in like a bad way. I'm talking about like what attributes make someone better at the UCAT. And you want to focus on that. What makes a good UCAT scorer a good UCAT scorer? And when I looked back at all my friends that did really well, for example, in UCAT, it's that it wasn't just that they were naturally smart. It's because the activities that they did or the extracurriculars that they did really complemented that. Okay, so people that I knew that did like one practice exam and was still scored in like 95th percentile. This was someone that is really good at music, for example. Is really good at, and if you're good at music, you're good at concentrating, right? You're good at counting time. You're good at that high level of concentration, for example, that's required in the actual UCAT. And I also knew people that were really into reading books, like constantly on their phone reading, whether it be manga or like actual books on there, like or webtoons, for example, just reading stuff, or novels. And they performed really well in the UCAT for verbal reasoning. I was like, okay, what are all these different attributes that make someone better at UCAT outside of just spamming med entry or edified monks? And so going into it in my second year, I wanted to focus on that. And one of the things I did was, okay, I'm going to focus on my cognition, my cognitive ability. And one of the things I did was I got like a Lumosity subscription, which is I think like quite unique. I don't know if anyone else has done it, but it's like a small app on your phone that trains like your attention, your decision making, and like your logic. So it's like small logic puzzles you get. It's really fun. It's exciting, and trains your attention and speed as well. Which in this day when you're so distracted by social media, for example, it's really great to have that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to train my cognition. I'm going to focus on that. And I'm also going to focus on just making my mind a lot more clear, because I found that the people that did really well in the UCAT, my friends personally, were able to be very calm during that exam experience. And when I talked to them about their experience, they mentioned how going into the UCAT, they just accepted it. They was like, you know what, I'm going to accept it if I do bad or not. And they did really well, but barely any practice. And those are the factors that make a good UCAT score as opposed to someone that underperforms, okay? So I focused on that. But in addition to that, I was doing a lot of practice as well. Because, you can't discount consistency in UCAT. I think that consistent practice over time is much better than cramming it, because it's a skill. You can't cram a skill. You can't become a tennis player, like a world-class tennis player, in 1 week. You need time for it, right? Your brain needs to adapt to that sort of time pressure, the ability to think. That's why, when everyone says, you can't cram UCAT, they actually mean it, and it's very accurate. So if you are, in a position where you do have time before UCAT, now's the time to start practicing early, start being consistent, because it does make a huge difference. It's like any other sport, for example.
For UCAT, I definitely would say it is stressful. I'd agree with that. I started around the end of year 11.
Okay.
Around the summer holidays before I started year 12. And my prep was pretty sort of meager. I wasn't doing that much until around early term 2 to mid term 2.
Right.
And that was when I really ramped it up. Those final 2 weeks, the term 2 to 3 holiday, I was doing a mock every day.
Yeah.
It was very, very intense looking back. Very, very almost solely focused on UCAT. VC took a back seat.
Yeah, especially in the holidays, you're take a bit of a back seat.
Absolutely, right? You're not going to school every day. You have a bit more energy.
Yep.
And I think the main takeaway people need to understand is it is worth, at least for a majority of unis, exactly the same as your ATAR.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And you might even call it unfair that, it's 2 hours compared to
2 years.
2 years,
Yeah.
right? It's almost not comparable, but you do have to recognize that and sort of dedicate some time to it, even though it is a bit of an unknown. It's a bit out there, kind of abstract, very skills-based, right? It is still extremely important for medicine. It can even carry a lower ATAR or interview, if that is the case. So, yeah, that was my journey.
I spoke to a friend recently who said that he didn't even know really what the UCAT was until only a couple of months before the test. And I think one of the challenges that we get with the UCAT is that some schools, some just individuals in general will know more about the UCAT. They'll have friends, they might have family, they might have other teachers or something that will go, hey, like, this is what this is. A careers counselor might go, you need to do the UCAT. This is what it is. Start preparing here. And a lot of people will also not have that opportunity. They might not know what the UCAT is. They might not have the resources available to them. So we'll zoom a bit more into your experience of actually doing tutoring at Contour for the UCAT. But were there any components of your preparation that you would maybe recommend to just the average student who's considering taking the UCAT?
I think, as in, if I had to summarize one major tip for the UCAT,
I
I would say, honestly, you have to have a very, very growth-based mindset for the UCAT. Especially if you are dedicating your final week or two to just doing UCAT, it's easy to fixate a lot on scores.
Yes.
I personally fell victim to that. I'm sure you did as well. Everyone is sort of obsessing over what they're getting and what their friends are getting and what they need to get in and what's the bare minimum, what the raw score translates to a scaled score, things like that, right? But people really need to understand, functionally, the only score that matters, as we kind of touched on earlier, is what you do on the day.
Yes.
Right? 200 clicks of the mouse, 2 hours, even less if you don't consider a certain component of the test. And so you do need that growth mindset when it comes to sitting your mock exams, reviewing them. Again, casting your ego aside. It's like, you know what, I'm pretty bad at this question type. I had to do that a lot. My ego was absolutely shot as I prepared for UCAT.
And I'm sure you thanked yourself for it.
Absolutely, and you'll never regret working hard. You'll never regret recognizing a weakness and working on it yourself.
Well, so I was really curious about that holiday period, actually, because that 2 weeks, I think, is a great opportunity for you to let the sacks go and go, let's focus on the UCAT. So what did that 2 weeks look like for you?
Yeah, I think those 2 weeks was when most of the preparation actually happened. And I remember my mum works in the city, so most of the time I would go with her to the city at Melbourne Uni. They have the computers there.
Yep.
So I would pretty much do a mock a day as much as possible. I would come home with my dad and then review the mock at home. So that's what I did most of the days. I would try to do a mock a day, and then you can't really not review it. So I had to come home, and then depending on how I did and depending on the energy I had for that day, I would try potentially doing a few mini mocks, things like that. But definitely I think that period, the 2 weeks there, did give me like some form of a boost. But I remember like the whole time there wasn't a day I scored past 3,000. So that was quite stressful. You know, I thought, okay, so I spent so much time on it. I haven't really looked at my VCE, so I don't know what I was doing with myself, but I was glad it worked out in the end. But yeah, I think those 2 weeks are super, super important for sure.
So you said that was it just the 2 weeks that you didn't actually see a 3,000 plus score, or was the whole
process?
The whole process. So you jumped from under 3,000 to on the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened there? Was it just sort of
honestly, I was surprised.
Yeah.
I remember opening the results, and my parents were like fully like ready to be like, it's okay. Yeah. But we were all surprised. We're like, okay. I was very close. I was getting like the week before, I was getting like 2,900. I was getting so close to the 3,000 mark, but just not hitting it or going over it, which is quite disappointing. But
I think big jump still.
Yeah, I think that in itself was in a form of motivation. So. Like I really got into the zone before the exam, the stress management, that sort of thing. So in the end, it worked out. Even I was a little bit surprised, I can't lie. But I'm glad it did, yeah.
Yeah, well, good surprise. Now, of course, walking out of the UCAT was such a great result, and particularly one that surprised you in a great way, is really awesome. And I think that I'm really interested to hear what your advice might be for a student who's walking out of that UCAT and not feeling particularly encouraged, or might feel like that score, oh my goodness, my med dream's over, like dentistry, I can't do it anymore. What advice would you give to that student?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the more situation I planned for from home. So I think walking out of the exam, the results do come quite quickly. I think like on the car ride home, it came and it was really scary. I didn't want to open it, but it's something you have to face. So if you're not feeling particularly happy about your results, I think the main thing to notice there is it's not necessarily the end of your med or dent dreams. There's so many other pathways to get in. If you can maximize your ATAR, there could be a chance as well. But other than that, just trying your best with the ATAR. I think it's quite a difficult thing to get back up from your UCAT and go, okay, now I have to focus on the rest of my VC or the rest of my ATAR. So just focusing on the rest of the year, making the most out of it, and then if you get med, well, that's amazing. But if you don't, then just thinking about other ways as well. So that's probably the main thing, yeah.
If you had walked out of your UCAT and it was too low, or too low for an offer, let's say, and your offer in Queensland didn't work out, would you have considered a gap year to retake the UCAT as an option?
Honestly, with how my whole UCAT experience went, with the ups and downs of it, I wasn't really sure about a gap year. So I did want to maximize my ATAR so I could have that option. But even then, I think if the CQ offer wouldn't have come, I would have still gone in some sort of degree like science or something, just so I have that security of being in a degree. I really don't like the idea of spending a whole year and then leaving it all for one day of the UCAT. I think potentially if you have a really high ATAR, this is what I say to the motivation students as well, if you have quite a high ATAR and the high 99s, it could be a really good option, but you just do have to be willing to take that risk. And I think in my case, I just didn't want to take the risk. But if you're up for it, I think it could be a good option, yeah.
So for the UCAT preparation, again, I just recommend having a question bank or something. If you can choose to do tutoring, obviously. I mean, I personally didn't. If you want to be 100% sure and you want to know all the strategies and stuff and you want to have that preparation, then obviously tutoring can be a good option. But again, I just didn't really know there was tutoring even for the UCAT. So I just had a question bank I'd Medify, which I worked through. And same thing for my mentality towards my subjects. It was just grinding as much practice, especially timed practice, under those exam conditions as I could. I even went to my grandma's house because she had a monitor and the mouse keyboard setup, which I didn't have in my house. Nice. To get the full practice on exam conditions. So I definitely recommend that. And that was a lot of what my preparation was. But I also think with the UCAT, was quite good about it because it's multi-choice, and especially with those question banks which are just accessible online, I just kind of do bits here or there when I had the time. So study, we had to sit down and get your books out and stuff like that. So we had free periods at school sometimes, or if I was on the train or something, I'd just do a few questions here or there. Just do a 12-minute or 15-minute abstract reasoning practice, however long that is.
I've forgotten how long.
Yeah, I've forgotten how long that section is. I just remember it was very short. So you can just fit it in where you can. Of course, I said I was pretty busy, so I just fit it in where I could. But then I'd also dedicate, I think it was Saturdays, for the last couple months leading into the UCAT. Saturdays were just my UCAT day. Awesome. That was it. I just did practice exam, and thoroughly look over it as well. There's no use doing a practice exam if you don't know what you did wrong and don't learn from what you did wrong. So I feel looking over your exams thoroughly and working out how you do the questions is a big part of it. I feel I almost had 50-50 between doing the exam and actually looking over it in terms of time. So it does take a while, that whole process. But yeah, that's my biggest advice, just doing as much practice as you can, setting out time to do it within your schedule, definitely.
Okay. And how was your actual UCAT testing experience? I mean, not knowing much about it. What was it like walking in?
Yeah, I think, again, I didn't really understand the scores I had to get. I thought if I got 2 800s, 2 900s, that I'd be fine. But in my position, that actually probably wouldn't have been fine. But I just had no idea. And I think that was almost good. I was a lot less stressed going into the exam day because maybe I wasn't aware of how much importance there was. So I ended up performing quite a lot better on my exam day than I expected, which obviously looking back on, I'm very grateful for. But with any exam, I think my biggest advice on exam day is don't study on the exam day. Really don't. Even the night before, keep it minimal. Just look over a few key things maybe in the morning or the night before, but don't go and do practice questions and things like that, because the night before, if you go ahead and do a practice exam and you do really badly, that's just going to really stress you out. So I feel that's really key. And then on the day, obviously, you just want to be fresh going into your exam. So I'd recommend doing it like maybe in the morning or early afternoon, just so you're not thinking about it the whole day, and so you don't like want to practice in the morning or something. Because that's what I did. And went in, and the testing center experience was fine. It was just like an office, really. I just like had a computer, and it was a bit daunting with everyone else around you doing it.
Like pods for you.
Yeah. So that was a little bit daunting in some ways, and I actually really screwed up my first section, like verbal reasoning. I remember sitting there like, I'm done. I've screwed it up. Like, chat, am I cooked? Like, I was like, I'm done here. But I think just no matter what happens, just go like, I've still got this. Like, just back yourself. So after that first section, I knew I screwed it up, but I was like, I've got 3 sections to go. Like, I'm just gonna smash them. And luckily, that's what happened. I really smashed those last 3 sections, and so I ended up doing okay. But just try as best as you can to not stress yourself out during the exam. You can be stressed out after the exam, that's fine. But like during the exam, just be like, okay, that's fine, that's done, that section's over. Now we focus on this one.
So if I was to like break down how I completed the UCAT practice, I tried generally doing maybe 30 minutes a day, and just doing that bit by bit, that accumulates so much, and as a result, you become better and better. And to me, in doing so, I found that it's much better strategy than like maybe like doing 2-3 hours one day. Like maybe 2 days a week you do 3 hours of UCAT prep, because in doing so, just practicing that much, I don't find it to be that beneficial, because it's a very skills-based exam, and as a result, it's more so you need to fine-tune your skills bit by bit over time. And so the way I tackled it was, like I said, 30 minutes a day, and I just kept doing that. And obviously, as you got closer and closer to the exam day, I maybe ramped it up a bit more. So I'd say like 30 minutes to an hour to an hour 30 minutes, and then I was doing maybe like very last few weeks, I was doing maybe 2 hours a day, just fine-tuning and going through practice mock exams basically. But one thing I'm grateful for, which with the UKAT course we have in Contour, is the live mocks.
Okay.
The live mocks. So basically, just in case you don't know what live mocks is, it's just like a whole simulation of the whole process. So the whole process of checking in, entering to the examination room, going through that whole process, and then exiting out and having a bit of a debrief, and simulating that whole experience. It helped mentally, just for you to like be used to the environment, and to make sure that maybe like the anxiousness and nerves that you get with the whole examination, they can be lowered and minimized as much as possible by doing those simulations. So I completing those, as well as my own practice and with the course, was generally my plan of attack for the whole process. But in terms of balancing, trying to balance obviously UCAT, school VCE, and other commitments, it was such a challenge, I'll be honest. Like, it's something that like I can't emphasize. I don't even know how I did it, to be honest. Like, it was so tough. But again, I legit think it goes down to the fact of just consistency of doing a tiny bit. It doesn't have to be that much, just doing a bit by bit every day. And if you can't do it a certain day, that's fine. But again, going back into it and just doing 30 minutes, even 10 minutes a day during busy times, and just like reviewing the UCAT basically. So yeah.
A marathon, not a sprint.
Legit, perfect way to explain it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience of the actual UCAT day? You've already spoken a little bit about the mock experience and how it kind of diffused some of the tension, eased the nerves a little bit, but what was it actually like? Doing the test for real?
100%. Because coming from Bendigo, I'd obviously travel down to Box Hill, which is where I did my
You went at Box Hill as well?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
I actually walked past it the other day, past the centre, and I got like
it was like a bit of shivering, like troll.
Yeah.
No, but I remember. So I booked it there, 10 a.m. session. So I slept over the night before.
Nice.
So I tried to prepare myself by the day before I went to the exam room, try to get a vibe of everything, just so like it wasn't too much of a new environment. But coming into the exam, you're gonna have nerves. I was so nervous, so anxious, so worried. It's like, it's natural. But I remember just going up the lift and then going into the waiting room. You just see all the students, they have their priming book, they're all stressed, and it just stressed me out. And I'm just like, oh God. Yeah. Like, it's real.
It is real.
And like, it's a whole epiphany kind of. You're like, wow, it's actually happening in
it's like waiting for a doctor's appointment. Everyone's sitting like facing forwards in like a waiting room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can see all the parents there lined up waiting for theirs, like children for those who've finished already.
Yeah.
And the whole process, like the ID check-in, it's so strict. And
they sort of like dawdle you out to the desk.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Exactly. They like, get the ID. Like, and they do so many ID checks. Have to check like glasses, ID. If you're wearing a jacket, take that off.
Yep.
Like, it's so strict.
Yes.
But that's the thing with the simulations that I completed before. That was already completed, so it wasn't too much of a surprise to me. And luckily, I think my nerves and so on, they weren't too bad. Like, they're gonna be there, but like I was still in a point where it wasn't going to affect my exam necessarily.
Yeah.
So I remember I was priming. I knew that at the end of the day, it's a really important exam, but I realized that very early on, so it didn't stress me as much. But I found that a lot of students, it seems like they stress about the fact that it's so important, and that really does affect their performance and their results. So something that I find that a lot of students should do is just, accept that, this exam, if you want to get into medicine, dentistry, anything like that, it is a very important exam and you can't take that away. But understanding that and accepting that early on is so perfect for you then to just focus on the actual exam itself. So that's what I try to do. And I remember walking into the room, having that mindset of, look, I've completed as much work as I can. I have no regrets. Whatever happens, happens. Just smash out the exam and see where it goes.
With the UCAT, I think that there's not really a time that it would be suitable, to be honest with you. I mean, it falls during the June-August period, which is right in the middle. And if you walk away with a score that maybe you're not particularly happy with, it can hit you where it hurts and kill your motivation a little bit. And you go, oh, maybe this is not something that I will end up doing. Medicine might not be for me. And that can be really, really tough. And you mentioned this uphill climb. So I'm really interested to hear how you actually bounce back from something that may have hit your motivation a little bit and hit you with an academic score that maybe you weren't kind of used to getting.
Yeah, most definitely. As I alluded to before with exam preparation, it's a bit of a mental game, right? Once you finish the exam, you cannot do anything to change it. Maybe you had a legitimately bad experience on the day and, your computer malfunctioned, which it kind of did for me, actually.
Really?
Yeah, my shortcut for the next command on the keyboard was not working.
Right.
So I'd select my answer option, and then I'd have to grab the mouse, click, and then do that over the however many hundreds of questions were in the exam. I sadly didn't really get any sort of special consideration for it. Look, I legitimately would have thought that it probably contributed to, maybe 30, 40 marks, because I ended up missing a couple of questions in the end. But, with those things aside, you can't really do much to change the score. And so bouncing back is thinking about, okay, where does this motivation truly stem for? Is medicine something that I want to do? And for me, it was something that I wanted to do from year 7. I remember filming a time capsule at high school, and there was little me, year 7, high-pitched voice being like, I want to do medicine. And then year 12, yes, I want to do medicine at the end. And the stark change in voice was there, but the motivation was the same. And so I had that in the back of my mind. Something that I did throughout year 12 when I started actually was journal entries. So in this especially I guess stressful time, journaling was one way to kind of ease my mind and put my thoughts onto paper. And so I spent a lot of time journaling, actually, particularly after the UCAT, kind of reflecting on what are my motivations to do medicine. And, the reality of being rural meant that it was still possible. It was in reach, and the end goal was in sight. And so that's the motivation that led me to the end.
So if you could go back to the time when you were sitting the UCAT again, and with all things considered, not knowing too much about the UCAT, maybe not having the resources that you needed, if you could change one approach that you had and maybe offer some advice, a piece of advice for how you would approach the UCAT or try and tackle all the different aspects of the UCAT, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I would say surround yourself with knowledgeable and like-minded people. I had the like-minded people. I had a good mate who also wanted to do medicine with me, but we were both sort of not very knowledgeable about the whole aspect of UCAT preparation. There was pretty much no one we could go to. No, high school career advisor in Cairns would really know a huge amount about the UCAT or the preparation involved for that matter. And so if I was to redo the whole thing again, I would probably find a program such as Contours that might include a bit more of a guided approach and a tutoring sort of structured approach where, it's not just you in front of a computer screen, figuring out all the shortcuts and the strategies on your own and reading through endless pages of tutorial guides. Someone actually being there and being like, okay, this is what worked for me. These are the little, hot chips here and there that helped me, during this particular struggle. Because I feel like everyone has that point where it's like, my scores are not improving. And once you figure out that one or two kind of bonus hack, those scores can start climbing again. I didn't really have that moment. And I think that would have, been helped a lot by some sort of guide at least being there, whether it was tutoring or, an older friend who had gotten into medicine, for example. So that would be my one piece of advice. Surround yourself with knowledgeable and like-minded people.
What would you say would be your number one piece of advice that you would give to students who are thinking about sitting or are currently sitting the UCAT?
I think for me, one of the biggest things that students hear, and to some extent it's true, you have to write it out, right? Like your scores aren't going to be linear. They're not going to increase drastically. It's not going to be an instantaneous improvement. That being said, you do have to see the other side of it as well. So if something's not working for you, after a certain point, you have to be analyzing what's going on. For me, the biggest mistake I made was I really relied on, it's going to work out. I'm going to get there. It's going to all succeed for me. My biggest regret was not acting on, okay, this isn't working for me. At the time I was using MedEntry and that was the only thing I was doing. Maybe I should have acted on, maybe I should have tried a program. Maybe I should have tried something else to see if something else could switch it up and make it work for me. So my number one tip would be always just analyzing, just seeing, is this the right thing? Is this working for me? And if it's not working and you're getting closer to that UCAT date, which is like ever coming, you really have to switch it up. You have to make something work. And I would encourage everyone to think about that as well.
And I suppose with that piece of advice as well, you're seeing with this friend of yours that you were working alongside, she's gone and taken this sort of different road, and you can see how that has benefit. I assume,
Yeah.
but from the way you phrased it, that's sort of benefited her in the long run. And I guess that would make it extra clear that it's important to divert and change what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of, well, thinking about it now, it is kind of clear cut for me, right? Because we were at April and we were both of us were sitting probably at that 2,700, 2,800, which is not quite enough, right? You need to be aiming for that 3,000 plus. And it's almost like, to put it into like an analogy, it's almost like she took a right turn and I just stayed on the main road.
Okay.
And you can see, because we were both at the same scores. And then in a few months' time when we had our UCAT date, which is almost same time as well, the scores are very different. And yes, you could say maybe there were extraneous factors, but then you have to look into maybe why that was. And a lot of that was also from execution on the day. Maybe there was a different way to approach questions and things like that. And beyond just exposure, and just hardcoring through questions. And I think that was very, very important for me to realize at the time. Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm so glad to have you here and have you sharing this is because one thing that I really want to communicate in the way we do these podcasts and who we talk to as well is that everyone is sort of done things differently. Everyone's experience of the UCAT is different in VCE or QC or whatever, wherever you're doing year 12 and your final years and all that. But also that not everything is going to be shiny along the way, and ending up in medical school, ending up in science, arts, wherever you are as a student ending up, not everything's going to go well on the way. And I think you've spoken rather so well to all of the different elements of resilience and reflection and actually going through that. And it's really nice to hear that you're not sort of bitter towards the UCAT and going, I just hate that test and things, because I can really see how that perspective could come up. But you're just saying, well, I'm in a position now where I can share this advice. I can guide people and say, it's okay if you're struggling, but like you said so beautifully, if it's not working, let's try something new.
Else.
Now, you were a student of Contours as well in the UCAT program. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about how that supported you in your growth and your journey as well.
Yeah, look, I think there's like kind of three key parts to where like being a student in Contour really, really helped for the UCAT for me. And the first of those is ultimately just like the structure, getting like an information about like what the UCAT is, what exactly is going on. Because I came in knowing like absolutely nothing about what the UCAT was. And that's so common as well, because like a lot of the time like schools won't give you too much information. You have to go out and look for it yourself. And so many students can like miss the importance of how significant this exam is for medical entry. So yeah, I think just the structure, like kind of starting practice early, but with this sort of stuff to practice, and like what exactly the UCAT is, I'd say that's the first like really helpful thing. The second thing is honestly just like the mentorship, the experiences and the advice from it, because like I would harass Ramad a lot of the time. I would just like constantly ask him questions about like his own preparation, how he approached it, and like what habits and things he did, because I think that whenever you want to like achieve a goal, whenever you're aiming for something, finding someone who's gone through that experience, finding someone who like has similar interests to you, that's really, really helpful to hear from them, both like what it's like on the other side, as well as again, yeah, like what kind of things they did. And even if you don't do the same stuff, you can just like notice what like this worked for them, I might try a variation of it, or I need to find, like it can help you find what works for you itself. And yeah, I think the third thing is I talked so much about how like mindset and strategy was the key thing, and that's something that was very largely driven by Contour's advice, because they so strongly emphasize like what exactly is going on with the exam, like how to actually approach this by changing a strategy, by changing a mindset, by changing the thought process that you have. And yeah, ultimately I found that super effective on testing, like on learning for this test that is supposed to be like unlearnable, that's supposed to be not something you can improve based on innate talent, but instead like there are these sorts of things that you can actually work towards to improve.
And for a student who's thinking about sitting the UCAT as well, naturally there are going to be a lot of anxieties around that, and also particularly, yeah, if, like you said, if you're not sure what the UCAT is, how important it is. I suppose if you were to talk to your past self or even talk to another student as well about the most important things to know about the UCAT, what do you think would be some things that you might say?
Yeah, look, in terms of what to know about it, I'd say two key things again here. One, of course, is just how important it is. Like a lot of universities, it's weighted as much as your year 12. It's weighted, or it might be like half of your year 12. But if you still think about it, like year 12, your 8R is something you've been building up for essentially 6 years of high school. And this one exam can come in and be potentially as impactful as that. So yeah, say first off is, of course, just how significant it can be if what you're looking to do is like medicine or dentistry. And the second thing I'd say is that the UCAT is a very structured, rigid thing where before I talked a lot about how like in high school, you want to approach stuff with curiosity. You want to do stuff that you're interested in, find passion. But with the UCAT, like if you want to do medicine, there might be parts of the UCAT you just really don't like. They don't sit with you. For me, that was VR very often, but you just got to like get up and deal with it sometimes. So yeah, it's in your preparation, really finding those errors because of the way the exam works. If you're not good at something, you have the biggest capacity to actually improve your score by tackling that specifically. The same, though it will be hard, it will be confronting, putting time into refining that will yield you so much more than just like perfecting something that you're already strong at. So yeah, it is a very different mindset where a lot of the time in high school, like the way VC is structured, you have like top subjects, you have bottom subjects, you can like kind of lean into your strengths a little bit. But with a UCAT, it forces you to be all-rounded in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous piece of advice. And my goodness, you've given so many good pieces of advice. And if I was sitting my UCAT again, hearing all of those different things would really help me with not only the skills that I'm working on, but also the mindset as well. I suppose if you had to boil it down to one key tip for the UCAT, whether it be actually sitting it or approaching it, one key tip for the UCAT, what would that tip be?
Look, I think that ultimately it's very, very easy to overcomplicate the UCAT. It's very easy to get like lost in the weeds of all the different advice people give, all the different things you can do. But when you boil it down to the very basics, I'd say the one tip, the one most important thing is to actually make sure you learn from your practice. Make sure that when you're reflecting, you're able to identify like what these issues are, what the things you're struggling with are, what the common problems are. Never brush aside an issue. Like never say that I'll get this right on exam day. Oh, I know how to do this question. I just a careless mistake. I missed something. Find every error and just learn from those mistakes, reinforce them, practice with a specific focus to address them. And yeah, if you keep on doing that, you'll keep on improving. It might be slow sometimes, it might be fast sometimes, but you'll keep on making progress towards hitting your maximum capacity, hitting what you're capable of.
To put it into perspective, going from a plateau of 2,700 to a final score of 3,260 is an unbelievable improvement. And clearly those skills that you're implementing in that guidance that you had made a really, really big difference. On the other side of that though, looking back and of course you got an exceptional score, but was there anything in retrospect that you would have changed in regards to your approach?
There were times where I was panicking, I was stressed. And, I think certainly I should have, if I could tell myself something, I would tell them to just calm down, everything will be all right. There are highs and lows. I remember 2 weeks out from my exam, I scored like a 2,400. It was an absolute shocker at the time. And it was quite significantly lower than what I was scoring before. And, I tell myself not to just worry, not to worry about it too much. And that, there will be highs and there will be lows and that everything's going to be okay.
It's definitely going to take a hit to your confidence though, if you get that so close to the exam. I'm sure it did. So how did you break out of that moment where you were like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling stressed? What was the approach to managing that stress?
I think taking the time off and just reminding yourself that you're doing the work. Because at the time, my exam was at 6:30 p.m., which is quite late. And so in the month leading up to that exam, I was doing a UCAT exam every single day at the exact same time at 6:30.
Yep.
And doing the exam, reviewing it, and then I'd sleep, wake up, and then UCAT practice, UCAT exam. It's just the whole repetition process, right? And then when I did feel that stress, I did feel that panic, I remind myself I'm doing so much for UCAT and reminding myself that I'm doing more than most people and a lot of people, and that gave me a bit of comfort.
You've mentioned a few times in this discussion about taking a break and taking that time off, but I've never actually really asked you what it is that you do for your time off. What does a break look like for you?
Specifically in year 12 for me, a break wouldn't be something massive like going to a game of footy or watching the cricket. It'd be something more low-key, whether it be going out with my family to have some dinner, seeing my friends outside of school, and formals were definitely like a well-deserved break.
Formals plural or?
Oh yeah, 2 fun go, yeah.
Awesome.
And so yeah, I think the most common one was just going out with my family and just taking some time to relax and just enjoy the company.
I'm always very interested in asking that question to guests that come on, because I think it's important to to sort of explore the fact that we do need breaks, and even high achieving students such as yourself, it is important to take time off and speak to the importance of that self-care as well. So in the end with the UCAT, I mean, an exceptional score and so much great advice you've given there about, reviewing and kind of taking stock of the exams that you're doing as well. It's so great to hear that you're reviewing each exam you're doing and reflecting on that. If you had to boil down your UCAT experience to one piece of advice, what would that be?
It would 100% be consistency. It's not a coincidence that most of the progress that I made was in that month period where I was doing UCAT consistently every day. And I think that's the game with the UCAT. It's not much of a content test, it's a lot of a skills-based test. And when you're just practicing and honing that skill every single day and remaining consistent with it, it's where most of the improvement's going to be made. And so for people who are worrying about their scores early on in the year, I don't think it's too much worry. I'm sure that they're not 100% consistent with it. Maybe they're doing UCAT on one day and then a lot of VC on the next. And that when you are consistent with it, that's where the improvement is made. So my final advice would be to stay consistent.
I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit, because I think consistency can be dangerous in a trap to fall into if you're consistently making the same mistakes. And I want to sort of prod that a little bit and ask, how would you give some advice on consistency that's actually going to help you improve? What else do you need in that consistency to help you get out of a rut or a sort of, that plateau like you mentioned?
It definitely takes a bit of self-awareness to realize that if you're doing something consistently and nothing's working, maybe you're doing something wrong. And so I think another key aspect would be bringing back to my advice before, getting support. So if you're seeing that you're doing all this work and you're not getting the results you'd like to or you'd hope for, it's important to recognize that, and rather than fall in the cycle, like you said, of just doing something repetitively and not getting any improvement. So I think in order to fix that would be to get some guidance. Perhaps ask a few friends as to maybe what they're doing differently. Maybe asking a tutor, maybe asking even some med students, because I know for a fact that I shot a few messages to a few med students asking for their personal advice, and that really helped get me out of like the cycle of the plateauing. And the consistency isn't only with doing the UCAT, it's also with like the work ethic as well. I think if you generally try your hardest and you get the support you need, you're self-aware of any mistakes you might be making or the lack of improvement you're making, I think that's all really important.
So it's just about getting better and better, having those techniques become subconscious rather than conscious as well. And then that's pretty much how my preparation just fluctuated over that time.
Okay. Well, you've given a really good picture of like a gradual progression. Do you think that there was a moment where you kind of had like I figured out the UCAT, it's clicked now, or do you think it was still quite gradual?
Yeah. No, I would say at the very beginning, it's like quite gradual. I would say the aha moment really came in the last 2 weeks, which is quite late, but also very normal.
Also good to have it before and not
Yeah,
during or
yeah. So I'm glad I at least had it. So the aha moment for me was mostly for AR, and then it kind of just cascaded down.
Yeah.
So with AR, I was not improving at all. Like I couldn't break an 800 at all. I was stagnating 600, 700s for months. And I was like, is it over for me? Am I doomed? And then essentially what I did is error logs. So I've been saying this pretty much throughout the entire interview, but it's really important that whether you get the question correct or wrong, I just recorded basically every single pattern that I'd come across, especially the official question bank questions, things like that. I recorded every single one, and then I was like, this is the characteristic, this is how I'll find it next time. And immediately after, when I did a mock, I broke 800. And it was like it was that aha moment. I was like, okay, so this is how I want to practice. And then I just did the same exact thing for VR, DM, QR. Obviously, I wish I had had that moment a lot earlier because I only had 2 weeks to kind of make those error logs. If I had, maybe I would have done better, who knows? But at least I did it. And I found that it wasn't like as big of a jump as I had for AR, but the other sub-tests did definitely improve after that. And that all comes again back to that review idea that you can't just do practice questions. You need to reflect on that mistake, and the most important part is like, yeah, you can reflect and be like, this is why I got it wrong, but then you need to review over it regularly. So maybe like once a week, twice a week, just so you remember the mistakes that you made so you don't make them again.
There's a lot of students who will be working to the UCAT now as well, and we've spoken about this in the context of VCE. Maybe they're disappointed with their scores, maybe they're hitting that 600 plateau, not on AR anymore of course, but on another subtest, or they're just really feeling discouraged and feeling the pressure of it all. Can you offer some advice for navigating that? Obviously you've got that clarity of, okay, I've got this great score in the end. Can you offer some advice for that student who's feeling really discouraged?
So like the main thing is, I'm assuming a lot of people, they'll have Metafy meta entry at this stage. And the thing about Metafy meta entry is that it'll be inaccurate. We tell our students to add maybe like 100 points to their Metafy score because on your actual exam, it'll sometimes be a little bit easier. And also the skills that you're meant to be practicing don't work as well for Metafy meta entry as they do for the actual exam. So don't take again, the scores that you have now as an indicator of how you're going to do. And fluctuation is like so normal. Like I would have like low lows and then not even high highs. I don't think I had any high highs. For example, across all my scores during Medify Med Entry, I'd maybe got 3,000 plus 5 or 6 times across maybe the 30 mocks that I'd done. And then on my actual exam day, I got 3,310. So how did I manage that? It's because the scores.
That's a big jump.
Yeah. It's because the scores don't really matter there. That's what I mean. So as long as you're practicing skills, and just think of it like this, you cannot get worse at a skill. Like if you practice it, it only goes up. You can only get better at it, even slightly. You can't become worse at it. So what I would say to that, those students who are discouraged is, the practice that you're putting in right now, it's not wasted effort. It's not like you're doing work and the scores aren't improving. The scores will come over time when you start doing more and more mock exams, maybe when you do them every day instead of every week or something like that. But until then, just focus on those skills and improving that. And don't let yourself be discouraged or think that, you're not good enough for the UCAT, or like you'll never get good at it, or that type of thing.
Gosh, what I would have given to receive that advice when I was in year 12, my goodness, I was so bogged down in scores, and that the fluctuation just bothered me so much. I think that's true for the SACs too, when there was a little bit of fluctuation. But gosh, for the UCAT, I wasn't going through necessarily like a contour tutoring program or anything. And I do of course wish that I had in retrospect, but focusing on the skills is such great advice, because the skills are going to be consistent. And like you said, they're not going to go backwards, they're only going to go up, but the scores will fluctuate. So that's excellent advice. And I really encourage anyone who's struggling with those fluctuating scores to listen to that closely. You've spoken so well to all of the different aspects of the UCAT and what it's like actually going through, and eventually you ended up with a wonderfully high score. If you could boil down some advice, number one tip for the UCAT, what would that be?
Yeah, for number one tip, I would say, again, stagnation happens for everyone at some point, will happen. For me, it was like 2,800s, 900s for a very long time. And the reason why people can't get past that stagnation is like, they're like, oh, I'm missing a skill, or it's my accuracy, or whatever. But at the core of it, like, you've learned all the skills, right? And that's why you've got into that stage. The reason why you can't build up from that is more about the mastery of that technique. So getting it from this idea of being a conscious technique to subconscious, because again, it's a skill, and sometimes, just how you breathe subconsciously, you want to also be practicing those skills subconsciously as well. So at that stage, what you really want to be doing is improving efficiency. So not just becoming faster or maybe even rushing those questions, which a lot of students can fall into the trap of. What you want to be doing is like getting better at maybe drawing your diagrams faster or interpreting them faster, shaving down time in QR. Maybe there's a faster formula you can use, not just doing the one that you're most comfortable with and that will get the question right. You don't want to just get the question right, you want to get it right efficiently and as quickly as possible. So for those students, I'd just definitely recommend focus on mastering that technique through that consistent practice and like challenging yourself under harsher time conditions and things like that, instead of trying to find a new skill or a new idea that you haven't learned yet.
Except I didn't do a little bit of practice every day. I did like a little, like maybe like once every few days, whatever. And my progress was just declining. Like I was just doing worse and worse and worse. I was like, oh my God, why is this such a terrible exam? And then in April, I like sat mock B with contour, and I got absolutely like slammed by this exam. I remember sitting at the debrief and Ethan, who's one of the tutors, he was like going through the debrief, and I like actually had an urge to like go back to like my thought of teaching. I was like, what? I'm teaching good.
She sounds good, yeah.
And at that point I realized, I was like, you need to get a grip. So I signed up with Contour, did the Contour course, caught up on it, watched all the content lessons on 2x speed.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. It was great. And then after that, I sat my exam in July.
So take me through your exam day as well. How did that go?
Are you sure you want to hear about it?
Yes.
It might not be. It's not for the weak of heart. I'll say this. My exam day was so cooked. But what happened was I woke up and I was like, okay, like live my life. But mum was like, no, don't make any decisions. Just sit, don't use your brain today. She brought me breakfast in bed. I was like living my life. And then after that, got in the car to go to my exam. On the car ride to my exam, I was priming, which means I was sitting there like going through verbal reasoning passages or like going through newspaper articles, applying my maximizing value of retention. Shout out to my tutor, Ethan. He would be so proud.
He trained you well, clearly.
And then after that, kind of, working on like applying my skills, remembering them. Went like in the waiting room, I like walked in and mogged everyone there. I was like prepared to like scare them because like I wanted to go in with the biggest God complex. Mm-hmm. And like anyone that tried to talk to me, I would just like look at them, like death stare them like this.
And confidence is everything, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
confidence and scaring the people
That's
around
going to
you.
people around you, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Because then they do worse. So
Exactly the plan. Oh, that's so toxic. But after I kind of did that, I went into my exam room and I started verbal reasoning. Everything went out the window. All my techniques, all my strategies, everything I'd prepared for out the window. Why? Because I'm like a naturally stressed person. So my brain doesn't do well under pressure. Obviously, like I don't have many flaws, but like this is a big flaw that I do have. And so after kind of having that hit of verbal reasoning and experiencing the wrath that like the UCAT could actually take, I like sat in that 1 minute break, and that was like my moment of like, chat, am I cooked? Like I sat there and I like talked to the universe. I was like really connecting with like a god that was out there somewhere. I was like, where are you? Come help me. It just wasn't working. And then what happened was I like looked at everyone around me and everyone was so composed. I was the only one sitting there like actually just crashing.
going crazy.
What is going on? So I like had like a bit of a crash out moment. And then I considered leaving. I was like, you know what? If I get up and leave, it's fine. Like what? Like I've already bombed it anyway. But then I like thought about the fact that my mum just wouldn't let me back home.
Wouldn't drive you home, just let you out of the car. Lock the car door.
I'd be homeless. It'd actually be like worst nightmare ever. So I decided to stay. And I was like, okay, the only way that we can clutch up right now is if we actively decide to do better in all the other subtests. And that's when like it hit me that like if I didn't do well in the other subtests, I was cooked. Like that was the actual point of like cookedness. So then what happened was like I sat through DM and I was like, you need to be locked in like you've never been locked in before. I've never connected with a higher power. I don't believe in higher powers, but I was connected with the higher powers
So locked in.
at DM. So I sat through my DM, finished that. And then after DM, I was like, wait, what just happened? Because I couldn't remember any of it. I was like so stressed out. It was like completely just a blur.
But you know that you're truly locked in if you can't actually remember what just happened. Yeah.
Exactly. Ooh. And then after that, went to QR again. Felt like QR kind of cooked me a little bit. Even though I finished early, I was like, there must have been trick questions. And then did AR. Didn't really do SJT. Just kind of did like A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. Walked out and that was it. Got my results about 20 minutes later and started screaming up and down with joy despite the verbal reasoning score that I got.
Well, you ended up with a 3280
Yes.
UCAT score, which is incredibly impressive and obviously enough to get you an interview as well. And from what you've told me, you must have had sensational DM quantitative reasoning and abstract reasoning scores if the verbal reasoning was like...
I would like to tell everyone what my verbal reasoning score was because I need everyone to know that like there is hope after verbal reasoning. My score was a 650. It is okay. Even if you feel like you're not doing as great as you hoped, you can still pull through in the other subtest. And that was like the biggest takeaway of that day for me.
One of the things that we've always talked about in the podcast is like the journey to get into medicine is never over. Like people take gap years, people, you know, the UCAT's not going to go well for everybody. The ATAR's not going to go well for everybody. And just don't give up on it.
100%.
And I walked out of my UCAT and I was like, oh, you know, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. And, you know, all these thoughts start creeping. And even, I mean, my verbal reasoning, I remember that minute subtest as well. It wasn't quite as, I can't tell as much of an animated story as you did, but I remember just, you know, the thoughts start creeping and you go, oh, you know, medicine's a dream that's not going to happen anymore. And it's such a dangerous way of thinking. And it's really important just to try and stay composed and go, there's more ways to get in. There's more, you know, I've got other things that can lift me up. And so, Barney, looking back on your UCAT, by and large, what would you say your biggest piece of advice is?
I think the one thing that people don't really tell you is to stop comparing yourself to other people. That was like my biggest downfall. At the start of my prep, I was constantly comparing scores with friends, with people around me, figuring out how everyone was going, where really you should be focusing on how you're feeling. That is where the real improvement is. It's not in your scores. It's how you're feeling throughout it when you're doing it. And you should definitely not compare yourself with other people because it's going to make you feel less worthy or too worthy. And then suddenly you just stop locking in, right? And because of that, I that's like the one thing I will always tell everyone. Don't ever sit there and ask someone how they're going with the UCAT. On your exam day, don't ever talk to anyone in that exam room. Just go in yourself.
The one major tip I'd say is focusing on your mental health and being confident, okay? Confidence generally, like whether it be for BC exams, SACs, UCAT, being confident makes such a huge difference in how you perform. That confidence of, you know, I can do it is great. And how do you build your confidence? You build your confidence through hard work, through practice, right? If you're cramming it, you're not going to feel as confident because your scores might not be showing that improvement. So obviously you're not going to perform as well.
And if I had to summarize one major tip,
Yeah.
I would say honestly, you have to have a very, very growth-based mindset for the UCAT. especially if you are dedicating the final week or two to just doing UCAT, it's easy to fixate a lot on scores.
Yes.
I personally fell victim to that. I'm sure you did as well. Functionally, the only score that matters, as we kind of touched on earlier, is what you do on the day.
Yes.
Right? 200 clicks of the mouse, 2 hours, even less if you don't consider a certain component of the test.
Yep.
Yeah. And so yeah, you do need that growth mindset when it comes to sitting your mock exams, reviewing them. Again, casting your ego aside, saying, you know what, I'm pretty bad at this question type. I had to do that a lot. My ego was absolutely shot as I prepared for UCAT.
I'm sure you thanked yourself for it.
Absolutely, and you'll never regret working hard. You'll never regret recognizing a weakness and working on it yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling particularly happy about your results, I think the main thing to notice there is it's not necessarily the end of your med or dent dreams. There's so many other pathways to get in. If you can maximize your ATAR, there could be a chance as well. But other than that, just trying your best with the ATAR. I think it's quite a difficult thing to get back up from your UCAT and go, okay, now I have to focus on the rest of my VC or the rest of my ATAR. So just focusing on the rest of the year, making the most out of it. And then if you get med, well, that's amazing. But if you don't, then just thinking about other ways as well. So that's probably the main thing. Yeah.
Saturdays were just like my UCAT day. Awesome. That was it. I just did practice exam and thoroughly look over it as well. There's no use doing a practice exam if you don't know what you did wrong and don't learn from what you did wrong. So I feel like looking over your exams thoroughly and working out how you do the questions is a big part of it.
Yeah, I'd say for those who are going to go into the UCAT currently, just again, balance and consistency. I know it's hard, easier said than done, but it is simple as that. If you put in the effort and do a little bit every single day or even a bit every now and then, you will see results and you'll see improvements. And it's even better to do it with friends because you will support each other as you complete it.
Surround yourself with knowledgeable and like-minded people. If I was to redo the whole thing again, I would probably find a program such as Contours that might include a bit more of a guided approach and a tutoring sort of structured approach where, it's not just you in front of a computer screen figuring out all the shortcuts and the strategies on your own and reading through endless pages of tutorial guides. Someone actually being there and being like, okay, this is what worked for me. These are the little, hot chips here and there that helped me, during this particular struggle. Because I feel like everyone has that point where it's like, my scores are not improving.
If something's not working for you, after a certain point, you have to be analyzing what's going on. For me, the biggest mistake I made was I really relied on, it's going to work out, I'm going to get there, it's going to all succeed for me. My biggest regret was not acting on, okay, this isn't working for me. At the time I was using MedEntry and that was the only thing I was doing. Maybe I should have acted on, maybe I should have tried a program, maybe I should have tried something else to see if something else could switch it up and make it work for me. So my number one tip would be always just analyzing, just seeing, is this the right thing? Is this working for me? And if it's not working and you're getting closer to that UCAT date, which is ever coming, you really have to switch it up. You have to make something work. And I would encourage everyone to think about that as well.
When you boil it down to the very basics, I'd say the one most important thing is to actually make sure you learn from your practice. Make sure that when you're reflecting, you're able to identify what these issues are, what the things you're struggling with are, what the common problems are. Never brush aside an issue. Never say that I'll get this right on an exam day. Oh, I know how to do this question. I just a careless mistake. I missed something. Find every error and just learn from those mistakes. Reinforce them. Practice with a specific focus to address them. And yeah, if you keep on doing that, you'll keep on improving. It might be slow sometimes. It might be fast sometimes, but you'll keep on making progress towards hitting your maximum capacity, hitting what you're capable of.
I think the one thing that people don't really tell you is to stop comparing yourself to other people. That was my biggest downfall. At the start of my prep, I was constantly comparing scores with friends, with people around me, figuring out how everyone was going, where really you should be focusing on how you're feeling. That is where the real improvement is. It's not in your scores, it's how you're feeling throughout it when you're doing it. And you should definitely not compare yourself with other people because it's going to make you feel less worthy or too worthy, and then suddenly you just stop locking in, right? And because of that, I that's the one thing I will always tell everyone. Don't ever sit there and ask someone how they're going with the UCAT. On your exam day, don't ever talk to anyone in that exam room. Just go in yourself.